The cold blue light of the emergency systems cast long shadows across the broken bridge of the research vessel, Silent Echo. Zara Keth opened her eyes slowly, feeling the sharp pain in her chest where the stasis chamber had kept her alive for the past 3 months. The air tasted stale and metallic. She knew without checking that she was the only one left alive. The silence was the worst part. Before the accident, the ship had been filled with the sounds of 12 crew members working, talking, and living together. Now there was only the weak hum of failing life, support systems, and the occasional groan of stressed metal as the ship drifted through the empty void between stars. Zara Keth pulled herself up from the stasis pod, her long silver limbs shaking from the extended sleep. Her people, the Villani, were built for grace and precision, with thin bodies and large eyes that could see in almost complete darkness. Right now she was grateful for that gift. The main lighting had failed weeks ago, and only the dim emergency strips remained. She moved carefully through the corridors of the ship, checking each room even though she already knew what she would find. Her crewmates lay where they had fallen when the engine core exploded. The blast had torn through the ship's main power systems, cutting life support to most areas. Only the bridge section had maintained pressure, and only barely. Captain Velmaran lay slumped over the communications console where he had died trying to send a distress signal. His second-in-command, Engineer Kosvek, had made it as far as the emergency stasis chamber before the toxic gases reached him. One by one, Zara Keth found them all. Her friends, her colleagues, her family, and all but blood. All gone. She returned to the bridge and activated the main computer. The display flickered to life, showing her the ship's status in harsh red warnings. Life support was running at 20% capacity. The air recycling system was failing. Food supplies were nearly gone, though that mattered less now that she was alone. The nuclear batteries had maybe 2 weeks of power left, possibly 3 if she shut down everything except basic life support. But the worst news was their location. The navigation computer showed they were drifting in the space between star systems, far from any trade routes or inhabited worlds. The nearest Villani outpost was 15 light-years away. Even if she could repair the communication array and send a message at light speed, it would take 15 years to reach them. By then, she would be long dead, her body frozen in the cold ship that had become her tomb. Zara Keth sat in the captain's chair and stared out at the stars. They were beautiful from here, bright points of light scattered across the darkness like diamonds on black silk. She had always loved space travel, loved seeing new worlds and discovering new things. That was why she had become a research engineer. But now the vast emptiness felt crushing, pressing in on her from all sides. The ship shuddered as another system failed somewhere in the lower decks. Probably the water recycling unit, based on the pattern of the vibration. She made a note to check it later, though she wondered why she bothered. Even if she could fix every failing system, she could not create fuel from nothing. The ship needed a working engine to reach safety, and the engine was gone, vaporized in the explosion that had killed her friends. She activated the personal logs and began recording her final message. Her voice sounded strange in the empty bridge, echoing off the walls that had once been filled with the chatter of her crew. This is Engineer Zara Keth of the research vessel Silent Echo, ship registry VX7749. Today is day 97 since the engine failure. The crew is... I am the sole survivor. Captain Velmaran died at his post trying to send our distress signal. The others were lost when the toxic gases spread through the ship. She paused, looking at the stars again. We were returning from the Outer Rim research station, with samples of a new energy source we had discovered. The samples are still secure in the cargo bay. If anyone ever finds this ship, please make sure the research data reaches the Villani Science Council. It could change everything for our people. Her voice cracked slightly. I do not know how much longer I can keep the ship running. The life support systems are failing one by one. I have maybe 10 days of air left, possibly 12 if I seal off the rest of the ship and live only on the bridge. I have been trying to repair the long-range communications, but without proper tools or replacement parts, it is hopeless. She ended the recording and saved it to the ship's permanent memory core. At least future explorers would know what happened here. They would know that the crew of the Silent Echo had died doing important work, trying to bring new knowledge back to their people. The next few days passed in a blur of maintenance and repairs. Zara Keth worked constantly, trying to keep the failing systems running for just a little longer. She sealed off the damaged sections of the ship, concentrating all her efforts on keeping the bridge habitable. She rationed her water carefully and ate only the minimum food needed to stay alive. On day 101, the main air recycling unit finally failed completely. She managed to activate the backup system, but it was smaller and older. It would not last more than a week. She sat on the bridge floor, surrounded by the scattered parts of control panels she had been cannibalizing for spare components, and felt the weight of her situation settle on her like a heavy blanket. She was going to die here. Alone, in the darkness between stars, with no one to remember her final moments except the empty ship's computer. Her body would drift in the cold metal tomb forever, carrying its cargo of important research that would never reach her people. The thought made her angry, not at her crewmates for dying, or at the universe for being cruel, but at the waste of it all. They had been so close to home when the engine failed. Just 3 more days of travel, and they would have been back in Villani space, ready to share their discoveries with the Science Council. The new energy source they had found could have powered ships for centuries, could have opened up new possibilities for exploration and growth. Now it would all be lost. She tried the communications array again, even though she knew it was pointless. The main transmitter was completely dead, and the backup unit could barely reach beyond the ship's own hull. She sent the signal anyway, broadcasting her location and status on all frequencies. Maybe by some miracle another ship would be close enough to hear her. But space was vast and empty. The chances of another vessel being within range were so small they might as well be zero. Ships rarely traveled between star systems unless they were following established trade routes, and the silent echo was far from any regular path. On day 103, she found herself talking to the empty bridge as she worked. At first it felt foolish, but the sound of her own voice helped fight off the crushing silence. She talked about her work, about the research they had been doing, about her memories of home. She told the empty chairs about her family, about the small garden where she had grown up, about her dreams of discovering new worlds. "I always wanted to see what was out there beyond our borders," she said to Captain Velmiran's chair as she rewired a control panel. "I wanted to find new things, new places where our people could grow and thrive. I never thought I would end up dying out here, alone in the dark." The backup life support system began showing warning signs on day 105. The air was getting thin, and the recycling filters were clogged with impurities she could not clean out properly. She had maybe 3 days left, possibly 4 if she slept more and used less oxygen. She made her final log entry that night, sitting in the captain's chair and looking out at the stars one last time. "This is Engineer Zara Keth, final log entry. Day 105 since the engine failure. The backup life support is failing. I estimate 3 days of air remaining. I have done everything I can to repair the ship, but without proper parts and tools it is impossible. The research data is secure and ready for transfer if anyone ever finds us." She paused, watching a distant star twinkle in the viewport. "I want my family to know that I was not afraid. Death is just another journey, and I have always been an explorer. I hope someday our people will continue the work we started here. The universe is full of wonders waiting to be discovered. Do not let our death stop you from reaching for them." She saved the log and leaned back in the chair. The ship was so quiet now that she could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, burning bright in the infinite darkness. She closed her eyes and tried to imagine she was back home in her family's garden, surrounded by the purple flowers that grew near the crystal streams of her homeworld. Tomorrow she would check the systems one more time. She would try the communications array again, even though she knew it was hopeless. She would continue fighting for life until the very end, because that was what her crew would have wanted. That was what her people would have expected of her. But tonight, she would rest and dream of home, and try not to think about the cold and darkness that waited for her in the empty spaces between the stars. Captain Sarah Chen stretched in her command chair aboard the patrol vessel Wanderer's Hope and looked out at the starfield ahead of them. They were 3 days into what was supposed to be a routine patrol along the edge of human space, checking for pirates and ensuring trade routes remained safe. So far, the most exciting thing they had encountered was a malfunctioning cargo drone that had wandered off course. "Anything interesting on the sensors, Martinez?" she asked her chief engineer, a stocky man with grease-stained hands who could fix anything that broke and improve half the things that did not need fixing. "Just the usual space junk, Captain," Some old debris from a battle that happened here maybe 50 years ago. Wait. Martinez frowned at his display. That's strange. I'm picking up something that doesn't belong here. Sarah leaned forward. After 15 years in space, she had learned that strange was usually code for potentially dangerous. What kind of something? It's a signal. Very weak, very old by the pattern, but it's definitely artificial. Someone built a transmitter and it's still broadcasting. Martinez adjusted his controls, trying to clean up the signal. The frequency is weird, though. Not anything we use and not anything the Centauri use either. Dr. Elena Okafor, the ship's medical officer and science specialist, looked up from her research station. Could it be from one of the unknown species we've heard rumors about? The ones the traders sometimes mention? Sarah nodded thoughtfully. The galaxy was a big place, and humans had only been traveling between stars for about 200 years. They had made contact with several alien species, but there were always stories of others out there in the deep space regions that no one had explored yet. Can you get a location on the signal? Sarah asked. Martinez worked at his station for several minutes. Yeah, but you're not going to like it. The signal is coming from about 4 light-years from here, out in empty space between systems. No planets, no stations, nothing. Just void. That doesn't make sense, said Lieutenant James Park, the ship's communications officer. Why would anyone build a transmitter in the middle of nowhere? Sarah stood up and moved to the sensor station. The patrol ship Wanderer's Hope was small by military standards, with a crew of only 12, but it was fast and had good sensors. It was designed to cover large areas of space quickly, checking for problems and reporting back to the main fleet. Martinez, can you tell anything else about the signal? Is it a distress call? I think so, Captain. The pattern is repetitive like an automated beacon, and there are mathematical sequences mixed in. Basic stuff like prime numbers and geometric patterns. Universal concepts that any intelligent species should recognize. Dr. Okafor joined them at the sensor station. She was a thin woman with sharp eyes who had spent most of her career studying alien cultures and trying to figure out how to communicate with new species. That sounds like a first contact protocol. Someone is trying to establish communication with anyone who might be listening. Or someone is in trouble and hoping someone will help them, Sarah said quietly. She walked back to her command chair and stared out at the stars. 4 light-years was not that far by space travel standards, maybe a week with their current engine configuration, but it would take them well outside their assigned patrol area and into completely unexplored space. Captain, said Martinez, I'm reading something else. The signal is getting weaker. Whatever is transmitting it is running out of power. Sarah made her decision. Plot a course for the signal source. Maximum speed. Lieutenant Park looked surprised. Captain, that will take us outside our patrol zone. Shouldn't we report this to Fleet Command first? By the time we contact Fleet Command and wait for orders, whoever is sending that signal might be dead. Sarah replied. And I've never met a spacer who wouldn't help someone in distress if they could. She activated the ship's intercom. All hands, this is the captain. We have detected what appears to be a distress signal from an unknown source. We are changing course to investigate. This may be our first contact with a new alien species, so I want everyone sharp and ready. We're going to help whoever is out there. The crew of the Wanderer's Hope had worked together for 3 years, and Sarah trusted them completely. Martinez was the best engineer in the patrol fleet, able to keep their ship running even when it should have fallen apart. Dr. Okafor spoke 6 alien languages and had helped establish peaceful contact with 2 species that had initially been hostile to humans. Lieutenant Park could establish communication with anyone, anywhere, using any equipment available. The rest of the crew were equally skilled. Sergeant Williams led the small security team and could handle any dangerous situations they might encounter. Chief Petty Officer Johnson managed the ship's supplies and logistics with an efficiency that bordered on magic. The other crew members were all specialists in their fields, trained for exactly this kind of situation. As the ship accelerated toward the signal source, Sarah found herself thinking about first contact protocols. Humans had been lucky so far in their meetings with alien species. Most had been peaceful, interested in trade and cultural exchange. A few had been hostile at first but had eventually become allies. None had been completely incomprehensible or genuinely threatening to human civilization. But this felt different. The signal was coming from empty space, far from any known trade routes or inhabited systems. Whoever was out there was truly alone, calling for help into the vast darkness and hoping someone would hear them. "Captain," Dr. Okafor said, joining her at the command station, "I've been analyzing the mathematical patterns in the signal. Whoever is sending this is definitely intelligent, and they're using concepts that suggest a scientific understanding similar to our own. The sequences include basic physics constants and geometric relationships. Any idea what species they might be?" None of the known alien species use this particular mathematical framework in their communications. "This is something new, someone we've never met before," Sarah nodded. "How long until we reach the signal source?" 6 days, 18 hours at current speed," Martinez called from his station. "Can we go faster?" "I can push the engines a bit more, but I don't want to risk a breakdown in the middle of nowhere. If we have engine trouble out there, we might end up needing rescue ourselves." Sarah understood. They were heading into uncharted space with no backup and no support. If something went wrong, they would be on their own. But someone was out there calling for help, and she could not ignore that. Over the next several days, the crew monitored the signal constantly. Dr. Okafor worked on deciphering the mathematical sequences, trying to understand more about whoever was sending them. Martinez fine-tuned the sensors, hoping to learn more about what they would find when they reached the source. On the 4th day, the signal strength began to drop noticeably. "Whatever is powering that transmitter is running out of energy," Martinez reported. "At this rate, the signal will be completely gone in maybe 3 days. Can we go any faster?" Sarah asked. "I can try, but do it. Push the engines as hard as you can without risking a complete breakdown." The Wanderer's hope accelerated, racing through the void toward the dying signal. Sarah found herself checking the sensors every few hours, watching the signal strength decrease bit by bit. Whoever was out there was running out of time, and she was not sure they would reach them before the transmitter died completely. On the 6th day, they finally detected something besides the signal itself. "Captain, I'm reading a ship," Martinez announced. "Small vessel, maybe the size of a research craft. It's not moving under power, just drifting." Sarah felt her heart sink. A ship drifting in space usually meant one thing. The crew was dead, the engines were broken, or both. "Any signs of life?" "The ship is still giving off heat, so some systems are working. But the energy signature is very weak. Whatever is keeping that ship alive is almost gone." Dr. Okafor studied the sensor readings. "The design is completely unfamiliar. I've never seen anything like it. The hull configuration, the energy patterns, even the materials. This is definitely from a species we've never encountered." "Are they alive?" Sarah asked. "Unknown. The ship is sealed, so I can't get detailed life sign readings from here. But the distress signal is still broadcasting, and that suggests someone inside might still be alive." Sarah made another decision. "Take us in close. Prepare for possible rescue operations. Martinez, I want you to study that ship and figure out how we might be able to help. Dr. Okafor, start working on communication protocols. If there's someone alive over there, we need to let them know we're here to help." As they approached the alien vessel, Sarah could see it through the main viewport. The ship was sleek and elegant with smooth curves and what looked like crystalline components integrated into the hull. It was beautiful in its way, but it was also clearly damaged. Sections of the hull were blackened, and she could see what looked like explosive damage near what was probably the engine section. "The ship looks like it suffered some kind of catastrophic engine failure," Martinez observed. "Probably an explosion in the main power systems. It's amazing anyone survived." "Assuming anyone did," Lieutenant Park added grimly. Sarah ignored the pessimistic comment and focused on the problem in front of them. Somewhere inside that elegant alien ship, someone might be alive. Someone who had been calling for help for months, broadcasting into the empty void and hoping against hope that someone would hear them. Well, someone had heard them, and if there was any way to save them, Sarah Chen and the crew of the Wanderer's Hope were going to find it. Zaraketh was checking the failing air recycling system when her ship's proximity alarm started screaming. At first, she thought it was another malfunction. The silent echo systems had been failing one by one for days, and false alarms were common. But when she looked at the sensor display, her large eyes went wide with disbelief. There was another ship out there. She stared at the readings, her hands shaking as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. The vessel was about twice the size of the silent echo, with a completely unfamiliar design. It was not Villani, and it did not match any of the other species her people had encountered in their travels. The energy signature was strange too, using power systems she had never seen before. But it was real, and it was moving under its own power, approaching her dying ship with what looked like deliberate intent. Zara Keth's first thought was fear. Unknown aliens discovering a helpless, damaged ship could mean anything from slavery to death. But as she watched the vessel's approach pattern, she realized they were being careful, cautious, not moving like raiders or conquerors, but like rescuers. The alien ship took position about a kilometer away and stopped. Zara Keth waited, her heart pounding in her chest. The air in the bridge was getting thinner by the hour, and she could feel the effects of oxygen deprivation making her thoughts fuzzy. She did not have much time left, maybe a day or two at most. Then her communications board lit up. The incoming signal was on multiple frequencies, broadcasting what looked like mathematical sequences. Simple concepts at first, counting numbers, prime numbers, basic geometric patterns. Whoever was on that ship was trying to establish communication using universal mathematical principles. Zara Keth's training kicked in. As a research engineer, she had studied first contact protocols extensively. She activated her ship's transmitter, broadcasting back the same mathematical sequences to show she understood. Then she added the next logical progression: squares, cubes, and basic physics constants. The response came back almost immediately, expanding on her transmission with more complex mathematics. Whoever was out there was intelligent and educated, probably scientists or engineers like herself. Over the next hour, they built up a basic communication framework. The aliens introduced concepts of mass, energy, and distance using mathematical relationships. Zara Keth responded with her own understanding of these concepts, showing that despite their different origins, they shared fundamental knowledge about how the universe worked. But mathematics could only convey so much. She needed to let them know she was in danger, that her ship was dying and she needed help. Using the basic number systems they had established, she began transmitting her ship's status. Power levels critically low, life support failing, only one crew member surviving. The response was immediate and unmistakable. The alien ship moved closer, taking up position only a few hundred meters away. Through her viewport, Zara Keth could see lights moving across the other vessel's hull, and she realized they were examining her ship with some kind of scanning equipment. Then came a new transmission, more complex than anything they had exchanged so far. Using the mathematical framework they had built, the aliens were asking specific questions about her life support requirements, her atmospheric needs, her biology. They wanted to help her, but they needed to understand what she required to stay alive. Zara Keth worked frantically to provide the information. She transmitted data about Villani physiology, the gas mixture she needed to breathe, the temperature range her body could tolerate, the atmospheric pressure required for her survival. She tried to convey the urgency of her situation, that her life support would fail completely within hours. The alien ship moved even closer, and Zara Keth could see through her viewport that they had extended what looked like sensor arrays and scanning equipment. They were studying her ship in detail, probably trying to figure out how to help her. But the most amazing part was that they were trying to help at all. These beings had encountered a completely unknown alien species in distress, and their first instinct was to offer assistance. In Zara Keth's experience, that was unusual. Most species were cautious about first contact, preferring to study and evaluate before making any commitments. These aliens seemed different. A new transmission arrived, and this one included visual elements. Simple line drawings showing two ships connected by some kind of tube or passage. The aliens were proposing to dock with her vessel and transfer her to their ship. But the drawings also showed questions. Symbols asking about the compatibility of their ship's docking systems, about whether her ship could handle the stress of a forced connection. Zara Keth studied her ship's schematics. The Silent Echo had standard Villani docking ports, but she had no idea if they would be compatible with alien systems. The ship's hull was weakened by the engine explosion, and any stress might cause catastrophic decompression. But what choice did she have? Her life support would fail completely within 12 hours. Without help, she would die regardless of the risks. She transmitted back her agreement to the docking attempt, along with detailed technical specifications of her ship's docking systems. She also included warnings about the hull damage and the risk of structural failure. The response came with what she interpreted as acknowledgement and reassurance. The aliens understood the risks, but they were willing to proceed anyway. Over the next several hours, Zaraketh watched through her viewport as the alien ship maneuvered carefully into position. She could see figures moving behind transparent sections of their hull, beings in what looked like protective suits working with equipment she did not recognize. They moved with purpose and skill, clearly experienced in technical operations. The aliens deployed what appeared to be a flexible connecting tube from their ship to hers. It was ingenious engineering, designed to create an airtight seal even between incompatible docking systems. As she watched, they carefully attached their end to her ship's main airlock, using some kind of universal coupling device that adapted to her ship's specific configuration. But then her ship's computer started screaming warnings. The docking process was putting stress on the weakened hull, and several sections were showing signs of imminent structural failure. The alien ship's connection was sound, but her vessel might not be able to handle the mechanical forces involved. Zaraketh transmitted the warning data to the other ship, showing them the stress readings and the risk of hull breach. The response was immediate. They acknowledged the danger but indicated they would proceed anyway. They would work as quickly as possible to minimize the risk. The connecting tube pressurized, and Zaraketh's sensors showed that there was now a breathable atmosphere in the passage between the ships. But it was not an atmosphere she could survive in. The gas mixture was completely different from what Villani needed, with different oxygen levels and unknown trace gases that might be toxic to her physiology. Another transmission arrived, showing a figure in a protective suit moving through the connecting tube. The aliens were coming to her ship, presumably with equipment to help her survive the transfer to their vessel. Zaraketh moved to her ship's main airlock and waited. Her hands were shaking, both from oxygen deprivation and from the sheer impossibility of what was happening. After months of being alone in the void, certain she would die forgotten and alone, aliens had arrived to save her. Not just any aliens, but ones who seemed genuinely committed to helping her survive. The outer airlock door cycled, and she heard the sounds of someone moving in the chamber beyond. Then the inner door opened, and Zaraketh got her first look at her rescuers. The being in the airlock was shorter than she was, with a more compact build. It wore a sophisticated protective suit, but she could see its face through a transparent faceplate. The features were alien but somehow familiar. 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth arranged in a configuration that suggested intelligence and curiosity rather than threat. The alien held up its hands, showing her a device that looked like a portable life support unit. Through gestures and simple movements, it indicated that the device was designed to keep her alive during the transfer between ships. The engineering was remarkable. They had studied her transmitted biological data and built a custom life support system in a matter of hours. Zaraketh nodded her understanding and allowed the alien to help her into the portable life support unit. It fit over her torso like a vest, with tubes and connections that provided the gas mixture she needed to breathe. The alien checked the connections carefully, then activated the unit and monitored the readouts. When everything was working properly, the alien gestured toward the connecting tube. Together they moved through the passage between ships, the alien staying close to ensure the life support system continued functioning properly. The journey through the connecting tube felt like the longest few minutes of Zaraketh's life. She was completely dependent on alien technology and alien goodwill, trusting beings she had never seen before with her life. But they had gone to extraordinary lengths to help her, building custom life support equipment and risking their own safety to dock with her damaged ship. They reached the other ship's airlock, and Zaraketh got her first look at the interior of an alien vessel. The design was different from Villani ships, more angular and utilitarian, but clearly built by beings who understood both function and form. The corridors were sized for creatures similar to her rescuer, a bit smaller than Villani but not uncomfortably so. Other aliens were waiting for them, all wearing protective suits and carrying various pieces of equipment. One approached with what looked like a more sophisticated life support system, larger than the portable unit, but apparently designed for longer-term use. Through gestures and simple movements, they indicated they wanted to replace her temporary life support with the more permanent system. Zaraketh agreed, and they worked together to make the transfer. The new system was more comfortable and seemed to provide a better gas mixture, closer to what she was used to on her home world. Once she was stable on the new life support, one of the aliens removed its helmet, revealing the face she had glimpsed earlier. The being looked directly at her and spoke. The sounds completely unfamiliar, but the tone clearly communicative. When Zaraketh did not respond, the alien tried again with a different set of sounds. Realizing they did not share a spoken language, the alien retrieved a small device and began inputting the mathematical sequences they had used in their transmissions. The device displayed the information visually, and the alien pointed to itself and made sounds, apparently giving its name or identification. Zaraketh understood. Using the mathematical framework, she indicated her own name and species identification. It was basic, but it was a start. Over the next hour, more aliens arrived to examine her condition and ensure her life support systems were working properly. They were clearly scientists and engineers, approaching the problem of keeping her alive with the same methodical care they had shown in rescuing her from her dying ship. But what impressed her most was their attitude. They did not treat her as a specimen or a curiosity. They treated her as a person in need of help, working to ensure her comfort and safety with the same care they would show to one of their own species. These beings, whoever they were, had risked their own ship and crew to save her. They had built custom life support equipment, performed a dangerous docking maneuver, and welcomed her aboard their vessel with no expectation of reward or compensation. As Zaraketh settled into the specially prepared quarters they had arranged for her, she realized she had encountered something remarkable. Not just an alien species, but aliens who embodied the highest ideals of civilization: compassion, ingenuity, and the willingness to help others regardless of the cost or risk. She did not know yet who these beings were or where they came from, but she knew one thing for certain: they had saved her life when no one else in the galaxy even knew she existed. And that meant everything. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the medical bay of the Wanderer's Hope, watching Dr. Okafor run tests on their alien guest. It had been 6 hours since they had successfully transferred Zaraketh from her dying ship, and Sarah was still amazed that the rescue had worked at all. The entire operation had been impossibly risky. They had been forced to dock with a structurally damaged vessel, create a life support system for a completely unknown alien physiology, and perform the transfer while both ships were at risk of catastrophic failure. But somehow Martinez's engineering genius and Dr. Okafor's quick thinking had made it possible. "How is she doing, Doc?" Sarah asked. Dr. Okafor looked up from her instruments. "Remarkably well, considering what she's been through. Her species has some similarities to humans in basic biology, but there are significant differences in respiratory and circulatory systems. The life support unit Martinez built is working perfectly, maintaining the exact atmospheric conditions she needs." Sarah looked at Zaraketh, who was resting on a specially modified medical bed. The alien was tall and graceful, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer in the medical bay's lights. Her large dark eyes tracked movement around the room with obvious intelligence, and she had been trying to communicate with the crew using the mathematical framework they had established during the rescue. "Any idea how long she was alone on that ship?" Sarah asked. "Based on her condition and the data we recovered from their computer systems, probably 3 to 4 months. Her entire crew died in the engine explosion, and she's been keeping the ship running on emergency power ever since. Another day or two and her life support would have failed completely." Sarah shook her head. 3 months alone in a dying ship, and she never stopped trying to repair systems and call for help. That takes incredible courage. Martinez entered the medical bay carrying a tablet full of technical data. "Captain, you need to see what we found on her ship." "The technology is amazing. Their energy systems are at least 50 years ahead of anything we have. And the research data in their computers, it's revolutionary." "What kind of research?" "New energy sources. They were studying some kind of exotic matter that could power ships for centuries without refueling. If we could understand even half of what they discovered, it would change everything for human space travel." Dr. Okafor activated a translation program she had been working on, combining the mathematical communication system with linguistic analysis software. "I'm starting to decode some of their language. Her name is Zaraketh, and her species calls themselves the Villani. They're explorers and scientists like us." Sarah walked closer to Zaraketh's bed. The alien watched her approach with curious eyes, then made a series of gestures that seemed to be some kind of greeting. Sarah responded by placing her hand over her heart and saying, "Sarah, I'm Sarah." Zaraketh repeated the gesture and made sounds that were clearly her attempt to pronounce the human name. Then she pointed to herself and said something that sounded like her own name. "She's trying to learn our language," Dr. Okafor observed. The Villani appear to be natural linguists. She's already picked up several human words just from listening to us talk. Over the next several days, communication between the humans and their alien guest improved dramatically. Dr. Okafor worked around the clock to build a translation system, while Zaraketh proved to be an eager student of human language and customs. She was particularly interested in the ship's technical systems and spent hours with Martinez learning how human engineering differed from Villani approaches. But the most remarkable thing about Zaraketh was her attitude toward her rescuers. Despite being alone and facing certain death, despite being rescued by complete strangers from an unknown species, she showed no fear or suspicion. Instead, she was grateful and curious, eager to learn about her rescuers and share her own knowledge in return. She keeps asking why we helped her, Dr. Okafor told Sarah during one of their daily briefings. She says that in her experience, most species are cautious about first contact. They study each other for months or years before making any commitments. She can't understand why we risked our ship and crew to save someone we had never met. Sarah thought about that. What did you tell her? I told her it was what humans do. We help people in trouble even if we don't know them. She finds that concept fascinating. Meanwhile, Martinez had been working with Zaraketh to study the technology from her ship. The silent echo systems were badly damaged, but there was still enough intact equipment to analyze. What they found was revolutionary. Captain, you have to see this, Martinez said, bursting into Sarah's ready room with excitement. The energy efficiency of their systems is incredible. They can generate 3 times as much power as our reactors using half the fuel, and their computer systems process information using quantum effects we barely understand. Can we adapt any of it to our ships? With Zaraketh's help, maybe. She's been teaching me the basic principles, and some of it might be compatible with our technology. But the real prize is the research data they were carrying. The exotic matter they discovered could revolutionize space travel for everyone. Sarah called a meeting of the senior staff to discuss their situation. They were now carrying a representative of a previously unknown alien species, along with technology that could change the course of human civilization. They were also still several days away from the nearest human outpost, traveling through uncharted space with no backup or support. The way I see it, we have several options, Sarah told her crew. We can return to our patrol route and report this to Fleet Command. We can head directly to the nearest starbase and turn everything over to the diplomatic corps, or we can take Zaraketh to Earth itself and let her make first contact with our government directly. Lieutenant Park spoke up. What does she want to do? That's the interesting part, Dr. Okafor said. She wants to go wherever she can be most useful. She's not thinking about her own safety or comfort. She's thinking about how to make sure the research data reaches her people and how to establish good relations between humans and the Villani. Sergeant Williams, who had been quiet throughout the meeting, finally spoke. Captain, I've been thinking about something. We found her ship in completely empty space, far from any trade routes or inhabited systems. How did they end up there? Sarah had been wondering the same thing. Zaraketh, can you tell us why your ship was so far from your home territory? Through the translation system, Zaraketh explained that they had been returning from a research station in what she called the Outer Rim, carrying samples and data from their discoveries. The route they had taken was supposed to be a shortcut, a way to avoid the heavily traveled trade lanes where pirates and raiders might target a research vessel. She says they were only 3 days away from Villani space when their engine failed. Dr. Okafor translated, if they had made it home, the energy source they discovered could have transformed their entire civilization. Martinez looked up from his technical analysis. Captain, I think I know why their engine failed. The exotic matter they were studying is incredibly powerful, but it's also unstable. They were carrying raw samples in their cargo hold and something went wrong. The energy release was what caused the explosion. Is it dangerous to us? Not anymore. The samples are inert now. Probably because they've been exposed to vacuum and radiation for months. But the research data shows how to stabilize and harness the energy safely. If we can understand their work, we could build engines that never need refueling. Sarah made her decision. We're going to Earth. Zaraketh deserves to meet with our highest authorities, and this discovery is too important to trust to routine diplomatic channels. Martinez, I want you to continue working with her on the technology transfer. Dr. Okafor, Keep improving the translation systems. We need to be able to communicate perfectly by the time we reach Earth. Over the following weeks, as the Wanderer's hope traveled toward the Sol system, the relationship between humans and their Villani guests deepened. Zaraketh learned to speak basic English, while several crew members picked up elements of the Villani language. She shared stories of her home world, a place of crystal cities and purple forests where science and art were equally valued. But what impressed the humans most was Zaraketh's resilience and optimism. Despite losing her entire crew and nearly dying alone in space, she remained positive and forward-looking. She spoke of her rescue not as a tragedy survived, but as an opportunity to build bridges between their species. She keeps saying we're proof that the galaxy has good people in it, Dr. Okafor told Sarah. She says that before she met us, she thought most species were primarily concerned with their own survival and advancement, but seeing humans risk their lives to save a complete stranger has changed her entire view of what intelligent life can be. Martinez had similar observations from his technical work with Zaraketh. She's amazed by our willingness to share information freely. In Villani society, scientific knowledge is shared within research teams, but it takes formal agreements and negotiations to share between different organizations. She can't believe we're just giving her access to our technical databases without asking for anything in return. What did you tell her? That knowledge belongs to everyone. The more we all know, the better off we all are. She said that was the most human thing she'd ever heard. As they approached Earth, Sarah found herself thinking about the implications of what they had accomplished. They had made first contact with a new alien species under the most dramatic circumstances possible. They had risked their lives to save someone they had never met, and in return, they had gained access to technology that could transform human civilization. But more than that, they had demonstrated something important about humanity. When faced with someone in need, humans responded with compassion and courage. They did not calculate costs and benefits or worry about political implications. They simply helped, because helping was the right thing to do. Zaraketh had seen that quality in humanity, and recognized it as something special. She had told Dr. Okafor that most species in the galaxy were cautious and self-interested, willing to help others only when it served their own purposes. But humans seemed to help simply because they could, because they believed it was their duty to assist those in trouble. As Earth grew larger in their viewports, Sarah Chen knew that their rescue mission had become something much more significant. They had not just saved one alien life. They had begun a relationship between species that could change the future of both races, built on a foundation of mutual respect, shared knowledge, and the simple human belief that no one should die alone if you can help it. 6 months after her rescue, Zaraketh stood on the observation deck of the Earth orbital station, looking down at the blue and green world that had become her temporary home. The planet was beautiful in a way that reminded her of her own homeworld, but different enough to be constantly fascinating. Where Villani worlds had crystal formations and purple vegetation, Earth had vast oceans and green forests that shifted color with the changing seasons. The past months had been a whirlwind of activity. First contact between humanity and the Villani collective had been officially established, with Zaraketh serving as the primary liaison and cultural interpreter. She had met with Earth's top scientists, engineers, and diplomats, sharing the research data from the Silent Echo, and helping to establish communication protocols with her people. The technology exchange had exceeded everyone's expectations. Human engineers, working with Villani technical specifications, had successfully built prototype engines using the exotic matter energy source. The new drives were 3 times more efficient than previous human technology, and could operate for decades without refueling. In return, Zaraketh had learned about human innovations in computer systems, communication networks, and life support technology that could benefit Villani exploration efforts. But the most remarkable development had been the speed with which formal diplomatic relations were established. Where first contact between species usually took years of careful negotiation and cultural study, humans and Villani had moved from rescue to full alliance in less than 6 months. The politicians back home are amazed, Zaraketh told Captain Sarah Chen, who had joined her on the observation deck. Sarah's patrol ship Wanderer's Hope was docked at the station, undergoing upgrades that incorporated both human and Villani technology. They keep asking me how humans were able to establish trust so quickly. Most species take years to build the kind of relationship we developed in months. Sarah smiled. What do you tell them? I tell them that humans are different. When you rescued me, you proved that your species values life above political advantage. When you shared your technology freely, you proved that you value knowledge over power. And when you welcomed me into your society without suspicion or fear, you proved that you judge individuals by their actions rather than their origins. Over the past months, Zaraketh had become something of a celebrity on Earth. Her story of survival and rescue had captured public imagination, and her willingness to share Villani culture and knowledge had made her a popular figure in scientific and academic circles. She had given lectures at major universities, collaborated with research teams, and even learned to enjoy human foods and entertainment. But she had never forgotten the crew of the Silent Echo, and the research they had died trying to complete. Today was the anniversary of their deaths, and she was preparing for a special ceremony that would honor their memory while celebrating the future their sacrifice had made possible. Dr. Elena Okafor approached them on the observation deck, carrying a data pad with the latest reports from the joint human-Villani research projects. Zaraketh, the quantum energy team has achieved stable containment of the exotic matter. They're ready to begin construction of the first production model engines. Zaraketh nodded. How long until the first ships are ready? 6 months for the prototype vessels. A year for full production. But that's not the most exciting news. Dr. Okafor smiled. The Deep Space Exploration Council has approved the joint mission proposal. We're going to build ships specifically designed for long-range rescue operations in unexplored space. This had been Zaraketh's idea, born from her own experience drifting alone in the void. She had proposed creating a joint human-Villani fleet of ships designed specifically to respond to distress calls in deep space, equipped with the best technology from both species and staffed by crews trained in first contact and emergency rescue procedures. What will they call the first ship? Sarah asked. The council has decided to name it the Silent Echo, Dr. Okafor replied, in honor of Zaraketh's original crew and their contribution to making this possible. Zaraketh felt tears in her eyes. In Villani culture, having a starship named after your fallen comrades was the highest honor possible. It meant their memory would live on among the stars, helping to save others who found themselves lost and alone in the vast darkness. Martinez joined them on the observation deck, grinning with excitement. "You have to see this, Zaraketh. The first prototype engine just completed its test run. The energy output is incredible and the efficiency ratings are even better than we predicted." They moved to a nearby computer terminal where Martinez brought up the test data. The new engines, built using a fusion of human engineering and Villani energy science, were revolutionary. They could propel ships across interstellar distances at speeds that had previously been impossible. And they could operate for decades without maintenance or refueling. Ships equipped with these engines could reach any distress call in this part of the galaxy within weeks instead of months, Martinez explained. "No one will have to drift alone in space for months the way you did." Zaraketh studied the technical specifications, her engineering mind appreciating the elegant solution to problems that had challenged both species for generations. "My crew would be proud to see this. They believe that knowledge should serve life, and this technology will save countless lives across the galaxy." Later that day, Zaraketh participated in the formal ceremony, establishing the joint Human-Villani Deep Space Rescue Service. Representatives from both species were present, along with crew members from dozens of ships that would be equipped with the new technology. Captain Chen had been selected to command the first rescue vessel, the Silent Echo, with a mixed crew of humans and Villani. During the ceremony, she spoke about the importance of the mission they were undertaking. "Space is vast and dangerous, and intelligent beings sometimes find themselves in trouble far from home," Sarah said to the assembled crowd. "When that happens, they should know that someone will come for them, that no one dies alone in the void if we can prevent it. That's not just a human belief or a Villani belief. It's a universal principle that any civilized species should embrace." Zaraketh was invited to speak at the ceremony, representing both her lost crewmates and the future cooperation between their species. She stood at the podium, looking out at an audience that included some of the most important leaders from two different worlds. 6 months ago, I was dying alone in a broken ship, convinced that I would never see my home again. My crew was dead, my ship was failing, and I was drifting in empty space with no hope of rescue. I had accepted that I would die forgotten, and that our research would be lost forever. She paused, looking at Captain Chen and the crew of the Wanderer's Hope, who were seated in the front row. Then humans found me. Not because they knew who I was or because they expected any reward, but simply because they heard someone calling for help. They risked their own lives and their own ship to save a complete stranger from a species they had never encountered. They built custom life support equipment in a matter of hours, performed a dangerous rescue operation, and welcomed me into their society with open arms. The audience was completely silent, hanging on her words. In doing so, they taught me something about what intelligent life can aspire to be. They showed me that compassion and courage are not just human qualities, but universal values that can guide all of us toward a better future. The technology we are celebrating today is important, but the spirit of cooperation and mutual aid that made it possible is even more valuable. After the ceremony, Zara Keth met privately with her human friends to discuss her own future. She had been offered permanent residency on Earth, along with positions at several prestigious research institutions, but she had also been invited to return to Volani space as an ambassador, helping to coordinate the expanding relationship between their species. "What are you going to do?" Dr. Okafor asked. "I'm going to continue the work my crew started," Zara Keth replied. "But I'm going to do it aboard the Silent Echo, as part of the rescue service. There are others out there lost and alone in the darkness. I want to help find them." Sarah looked surprised. "You want to serve on a rescue ship? After what you went through?" "Because of what I went through. I know what it's like to drift in the void, certain that no one will come for you. I want to be there when we find the next person in that situation. I want to tell them that they're not alone, that people care enough to come looking for them." A year later, the Silent Echo launched on its first official mission. The ship was a marvel of engineering, combining the best of human and Volani technology. It was fast enough to respond to distress calls across vast distances, tough enough to survive in dangerous environments, and equipped with the most advanced rescue and medical facilities ever built. The crew was equally impressive. A carefully selected team of humans and Volani trained in everything from emergency medicine to first contact protocols. They were prepared to help anyone they might encounter, regardless of species or circumstances. Zara Keth served as the ship's chief cultural liaison and rescue specialist, drawing on her own experience to help develop procedures for dealing with survivors in extreme situations. She had also become fluent in several human languages and had helped establish communication protocols for contact with unknown species. Their first rescue mission came just 3 weeks after launch. A mining ship from the Centauri Republic had suffered engine failure in a remote system, leaving 43 crew members stranded on a barren planet with failing life support. The Silent Echo reached them in 2 days, a journey that would have taken weeks for conventional rescue vessels. The rescue was flawlessly executed. The Silent Echo's advanced medical bay treated injured miners, while its cargo holds provided temporary shelter for those whose habitat domes had been damaged. Within hours, all 43 miners were safe and receiving proper medical care. But for Zara Keth, the most meaningful moment came when she spoke with the mining crew's captain, a grizzled veteran who had given up hope of rescue. "How did you find us so fast?" he asked. "Because no one should die alone in space if we can prevent it," Zara Keth replied, using the words Captain Chen had spoken at the ceremony a year earlier. "Someone was listening for your call and someone came as soon as they heard it." The captain stared at her with tears in his eyes. "You're not even human. Why do you care what happens to us?" Zara Keth smiled, thinking of her own rescue and the lessons she had learned about compassion and courage. "I learned from humans that caring is not about species or politics or advantage. Caring is about recognizing that every intelligent life has value, and that we all have a responsibility to help each other. As the silent echo continued its patrol through the galaxy, Zaraketh often found herself standing on the observation deck, looking out at the stars and thinking about her journey from despair to hope. She had lost her original crew, but she had gained a new family among the humans. She had lost her research ship, but she had helped create something better. A symbol of cooperation between species and a promise that no one would die alone if they could prevent it. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of beings willing to help each other, and that Zaraketh had learned made all the difference between darkness and light, between despair and hope, between dying alone and living among friends.